First we talk craft, now let's talk review. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing Wired for Story by Lisa Cron. This was the May choice for Let's Talk Craft Book Club, which is a book club for writers that I host here on my channel every single month. Every month we choose a book to read and then we discuss it during a live chat. I usually have different co-hosts and then you guys also talk in the live chat and we all discuss what we think of that book. For more information on that, check out the description and be sure to follow the Instagram for the book club as well. Now last week we discussed Wired for Story, so if you missed that, I will link that above and down in the description so you can check out a full 2-hour discussion of this book and some of the things that she talks about with my fellow co-hosts, Kevin from Kevlandia and Caitlin from Caitlin Duncan, as well as seeing the live chat from everyone else that also read the book. But what I want to do today is give you a short little review of this. If you just want to check out, is this even something I should consider? Do I even want to read this book? And then once you read the book, you can check out the live chat. So let's get started on Wired for Story. Let's start with the pros, because there are quite a bit of pros that I had with reading this book. First of all, this is a great introductory book for those of you who are a little newer to writing. I wouldn't say someone who's never written anything before, never even considered writing. This might be a little bit more advanced than that, but I think it's really great for someone who's just starting out. Or if you're just starting out with thinking about writing craft. Okay, I don't want to hold this through the whole thing. So someone who is just thinking about writing craft, this is a really good introduction. Gosh, okay. This is a really good introduction to writing craft. So I think it's really, really accessible and easy to understand for those of you that are kind of newer to thinking about writing in a more complex way. I think the language that she uses, the topics that she talks about, it's very, very accessible, especially in comparison to some other books that we've read previously, which I will not mention here. I really liked the discussion about the beginning of your book, how to hook your reader in the first sentence, in the first paragraph, and in the first chapter. I think there was a lot of really good, solid advice that actually really made me think about my own book, and I'm basically gonna rewrite the whole first chapter because of it. But this is good news because I think that what I had was not like hooky enough, and I think some of the advice she gave like really was like light bulb moment for me, what I needed to do. And this is really great for me because I am seeking traditional publication, but I don't have an agent yet. So when you're trying to get an agent, you need to pop like really quickly with your story, or they're just be like next, because you know they're getting hundreds of people a day. So I feel like her advice is going to help the beginning of my book really kind of pull the reader in, or at least better than it did before. I think she gives really good advice on that. And I think that's gonna help me be more likely to hook an agent when they're trying to look at the first few pages of my book. She also talks quite a bit on where your story should start, like sometimes like in the timeline of your character's life. So I thought that was really helpful as well. And it kind of solidified that I was starting at the right place. I know during the live chat, some people said that reading that section made them realize that they were starting the story in the wrong place. So I think that that was really helpful because I think that sometimes we don't really think about like where we should start the book. I also really liked her discussion on characterization. She talks about those dreaded character sheets that some people love and some people hate. I am in the club of really wish I could use them, but actually they drive me crazy and I end up not using them, or they give me like a ton of anxiety because I feel like I don't know anything anymore and then I question everything I'm doing. And so basically she kind of breaks down those character sheets, what you should know, what you really don't need to know. And she gives you a couple of like little things that you 100% have to know before writing. And I felt like that was really helpful. In fact, that's similar to something else I really liked about the book. And she gives a lot of myths, like popular writing myths, and then tells you the truth of them. And I'm telling you guys, that is one of the most invaluable parts of the book because there are some real myths out there that are still being pushed by people even here on authortube. I think, you know, with the best of intentions. And she really breaks down those myths and what is the truth of it, where it's coming from, but how it's somehow maybe getting misunderstood or distorted, and her advice on what to do with those little nuggets of information I felt like was so helpful. Like she talks about show rather than tell in particular as one. I thought that one was super helpful. So I definitely think that that was a huge pro of this book, was really breaking down these common myths or these common sayings that we hear about writing, and really like, what do they mean, where are they coming from, and how should you actually apply that advice. But speaking of those little nuggets or little boiled down, that's also another pro that I really like from this book, is that yes, she did talk about topics like in depth, but then she would kind of break down some of these into like maybe 1 or 2 sentences or like a short little list, a numbered list or something. And I found that really, really helpful because they're like little things you could jot down like on a post-it or a note card and kind of put up in front of you so that you don't forget them. And she really boils them down to like, hey, if you're only gonna remember 2 things, these are the 2 things. Or hey, if you really want to apply it, make sure you're doing this. And she'll have like little sayings or something like that. And that is really, really helpful. You can tell that she's a teacher because she really implements some of the things that teachers use to help people remember or sort of process a lot of information. In fact, another thing that she really uses, which I also appreciated, was her use of metaphors. I think metaphors are extremely helpful. And you'll find that that sometimes is what a lot of these craft books are. It's just really people explaining the same concepts, but using different metaphors or different applications of that. And that maybe it didn't click for you in that book, but it did in this one. So I think she was really good about that, but we are gonna come back to the metaphors in a minute when I'm talking about maybe some of the things I didn't like, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. One of the sections I really, really enjoyed was her cause and effect section. This one was kind of like the first section where she's talking about the beginning of the book. This one was also really, really impactful to me. Maybe a little, I would even say transformative for me, because I didn't realize that some of my scenes, I was choosing when they were happening based on either nothing or like a calendar, rather than this has to happen because this thing happened in the previous scene, if that makes sense. So she calls it her cause and effect. Because this happened, now this is going to happen. So she kind of talks about, and she of course explains this way more in depth, but it was like huge light bulb moment for me, realizing that I have not been doing this with all of my scenes. And this is something that I struggle with, is transitions between scenes and chapters, not paragraphs, chapters. And her sort of describing like how you should know what's happening and how you should be connecting them was really just like, wow, okay, I need to like regroup, rethink, and rewrite some things. So I definitely think that was a huge, huge pro that I got out of the book, was her sort of, and she does boil that down to, I forget the exact phrasing, I need to write it down because that's what's good about these little phrases, and like put it up somewhere. It's like, if this, then this, which, it's something like that. Read the book, you'll get it. So, but anyway, her cause and effect really, really, I think was super helpful. And I hadn't really heard anyone, at least the way that she described it, explain it in this way on how to arrange your scenes so that it seems almost like inevitable that the next thing happens, if that makes sense. And then the last thing I really liked about this book is she really emphasized emotions in book. Now this might be something that maybe is debatable in terms of writing, but she says like all the plot in the world doesn't matter if you can't make your readers care about your characters. And I 100% agree. And I think she really sort of discusses this in a great way of like how to kind of keep going with that like emotional arc, I guess you could say, or making your readers feel certain things so that you continue, so that they want to continue reading the book, because you can have all these really great like plot devices or super great action, really like, ooh, crazy interesting, but if your people don't care about your character, then who cares, you know, like you're not invested. So I think she talks a lot about that and really emphasizes emotion, which I think was right on, and I really appreciated that about the book. But now let's talk about the cons. There were some cons I found to the book, to be honest. Some of her examples were a little weird, like kind of cringy, and some of them went on a little too long. She's a talkie, which, you know, is fine, it's cool, but it's kind of like, okay, I get it, you know? Like, I felt like sometimes, getting back to the metaphors, she would use too many metaphors about the same topic. Like, you didn't need that many. And I also felt like maybe sometimes she was describing the same concept just differently and calling it something different, but it was actually the same. At least in my mind it was. So that was just like a little confusing. And so maybe that wasn't her intention. And if it wasn't her intention, then maybe she should have done a little bit better at differentiating the concepts. So at times I was kind of like, isn't this kind of what we just talked about in the last chapter? Isn't this kind of the same thing? So there was a little bit of that. Not a lot, but a little bit. And I did say in the plus that this is really good for beginners, but that also can be a con. It was a lot of stuff that if you've done any sort of writing craft reading before, you may have heard some of these things before. It's not a lot of new information, although I do think the way that she explained and applied the information could be new, because like I said, I've heard some of this stuff about cause and effect and hooking and all that kind of stuff, but I felt like she explained it in a way that really like registered for me in a way that I don't think had in previous books. So that was like a little bit of a con, that I didn't feel like there was a ton of new information, but I do think the way she explained it, especially because she's a writing teacher, really like was helpful for me. So that was kind of a con. And also some of those topics were just scratching the surface, but that also, you know, it wasn't really meant to be a super in-depth, it was more just kind of like a general scratching the surface of these topics, which I think is okay, because it made me want to read her second book, which is Story Genius, that I do plan to read, where it does kind of get into the particulars of those a little bit more. So she does do it, just not in that book. So I definitely wouldn't say that if you're only going to read one craft book your whole life, that you read that one, because I don't think it's in depth enough. So that's a little bit of a con, just that it couldn't be like the one and only, but is that really a con? I don't know, like you decide. This was a little bit more of a personal con, but I felt like some of her advice, she really emphasizes suspense and like reveals, shasha. And I don't think all books have suspense and reveals. Certainly the one that I'm writing doesn't really, and so that's really just kind of personal. Like, no book you read is going to be like 100% applicable to every single person in every single book, and also you don't even have to take all of the advice. But for me, it was just like, she really made me want to like she really made it seem like you had to have these things, and I was like, but my book doesn't. Like, should I make up something that is like a big shasha reveal? And then I was like, no girl, don't be shoving stuff in the book that doesn't need to be there. So that was like a little bit of a con, just because I felt like, you're making me feel like this has to apply to me and it can't apply to me. You know what I'm trying to say. So again, that could just be personal. And then the last con, I would say, honestly, is kind of the brain science part of this. She says, the writer's guide to using brain science to hook readers. She does use brain science, don't get me wrong. And I found some of the anecdotes that she includes, like she does do research. There's quite a bit of like sourcing in the back, you know, all that kind of stuff. But to be honest, as a writing instructor myself, not creative, but composition, it didn't feel like the book that she was writing was informed by the research, but rather she already had her ideas, she already had her points, and then she was just kind of shoving some of the points in there to like use them to like prove it. So some of them weren't 100% like connected to what she was talking about always. A lot of them were very vague, very general, kind of felt more just like sayings or like platitudes rather than like the real brain science. So I'm not like questioning it. I think I don't know. It was just like, I think they were trying to be accessible. Sorry that Khaleesi's barking in the background. I think they were trying to be accessible and just kind of like not be too sciencey, but it just felt kind of like, I didn't feel like it added all that much. Some of it was a little interesting, but that was it. But it definitely didn't add that much. And as you can see, I marked a lot of pages. So I definitely think this is a super helpful, good craft book to read. Khaleesi my dog wants to be included in the end of this review. So Khaleesi, what did you think? Did you like the book? I think she liked it. So who do I think could benefit from this? Like I said earlier, I think beginning writers who are maybe on their first or second book, maybe they just wrote their first draft and they're looking to level up their writing during their revision. I don't think it would be super helpful for someone who's read 5+ craft books or someone who's published 5 books, you know, like it's maybe a little below you at that point. But definitely if you're new to writing craft books or thinking about writing critically, or if you're new to writing and you're still in the trenches of like your first or second book or first or second drafts of a book, I definitely think I would recommend this for you. Overall, I give this a 4 out of 5. I definitely think this is worth the buy and you should. So if you want to check out this book and you haven't already, I have all the information down in the description so you can check out the book. Also down there, you will find the information on the next book we're going to be be reading for June's Let's Talk Craft. And so if you want to find out what book we're going to be reading, when that's going to happen, and who our new co-host is for the month, please be sure to check out that video that is linked down below. So that's all for today's book review. Thank you for checking it out, and if you found this helpful, please be sure to like this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!